This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. This is Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And, of course, we broadcast from beautiful Old Town Scottsdale, Arizona, where it's either heaven or hell. And right now it is pure heaven. It is gorgeous. Flowers are blooming. And the good thing is there's nobody on the streets. There's no cars. It's really, really heaven. So, anyway. Kim, anything you want to say real quickly?
No, it's very interesting times, of course, and we just encourage everybody. People just are going to have to get back to work as soon as possible, and the quicker we can do that, the better this nation's going to be, the better the world's going to be. So that's my biggest concern, is getting people back to work as soon as possible. So
it's my honor today to have a very, very special guest, an old-time friend. He's now called the Leprechaun. That's an inside joke, unless you haven't been watching his YouTube videos, but Patrick is the Leprechaun. So anyways, Patrick met David, and I met him years and years ago, and he drove up in a bus, a huge bus. And I said, who is this character, And he said, well, we're doing this thing called YouTube. And I'm going, I'm so old, I don't even know what YouTube is. But anyway, Patrick's been a friend ever since then. I must say something about him. The reason I definitely wanted him on this Rich Dad Radio Show is because I would say Patrick is prescient, which means he has a crystal ball. He kind of knows what people need to know. And so his guests are always just ahead of the curve. Like if you can talk to him, a month earlier, you'll see the future. Just like you had Kobe Bryant on the program. That was, just powerful. So anyway, it's with great pleasure to honor a great person. Kim and I were partners with Tony Robbins 40, 50 years ago. In the dark ages were here. But you have the same energy as Tony, but I think you're a better teacher than he is. So anyway, we're honored to have you part of this program, Patrick.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be on with you and Kim.
And let me just say, Patrick, you're the author. I love the title of your book, the author, Drop Out and Get Schooled. Love that. The Case for Thinking Twice About College, 25 Laws for Doing the Impossible, and the Life of an Entrepreneur, 90 pages. And you're the CEO of PHP Agency, Inc., which I believe is insurance, correct? Mm-hmm. And then Valuetainment Media. And you do entertain. I've watched some of your pieces and your YouTubes, and what I love about you is you're no BS. You're a very straight talker, and happy to have you on the show.
And you keep it simple for me. So
yeah,
anyway, I really
me too.
appreciate that.
Me too.
But do you want to explain really quickly how I call you the Leprechaun?
You talking about the Lucky story, or which part of the Leprechaun?
That guy who couldn't, he memorized a whole deck of cards. I couldn't believe it. I mean, what was his name? You shuffled this deck of cards, and then he could call them as they came. Anyway,
Richard Turner.
Yeah, that was amazing. So he was
unbelievable guy. Yes.
I sat there, but he kept saying everybody could do it. I said everybody but me. That was my response. This guy could he would memorize the whole order of a deck of cards after it was shuffled, and then he could call it coming back. I'm going, holy mackerel!
Unreal.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the kind of guest that Patrick has on, and I like to think I'm part of that category, but anyway, we've had fantastic guests, and you're prescient. You're ahead of the curve, and I think that's the key to being successful today. So anyway, welcome to the program, Patrick.
It's good to be on with you. It seems like when you've been with us twice, at one point when we had a couple thousand subscribers, and then today, and each time we've had you, our audience loves hearing from you.
Well, thank you.
And I told you when you and I were together, your book is the third book I ever finished cover to cover. And that was back in 1999 or 2000 when I first got out of the Army. First book I ever read cover to cover was How to Win Friends and Influence People. Second book I read cover to cover was How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins. Back in the days, real estate, I was in the Chatsworth area. Third book I read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then it's been a couple thousand since. But your book was a revolutionary book. But obviously, 50 million people can attest to that.
Right, and you have your own book coming out right now called Drop Out and Get Schooled. And what is your message behind that book? Because I agree 100% behind that idea, because you don't learn much in school that applies to real life. I mean, school's important, but it's not about real life.
That book came out a couple of years ago. My next book that's coming out in on June 30th. It's called Your Next 5 Moves with Simon & Schuster. It's called Your Next 5 Moves. That one, the Dropout and Get Schooled, Robert, you and I are on the same page with that.
Yeah, you guys are.
Unless if you're trying to major in any of the STEMs, you know what the STEMs are. I mean, you're trying to be a scientist, a doctor, a lawyer. I get it. You got to go to school because, you need to go through that route. But if you're trying to become somebody who's a business owner or an entrepreneur or somebody that wants to get into sales, a fine arts is not going to do nothing for you, but get your parents to be a little bit more in debt, if you get a fine arts degree. And nowadays, one of the best ways to get any kind of education, the fastest way is just shadowing somebody. Go work under somebody and see what happens. That'll teach you way more of you shadowing someone than going and doing anything else. That's the one part about that book. As far as Your Next 5 Moves goes, that book was inspired because you and I both are military. You're Marines. I'm Army. You're at a different era. I'm more a different era. When you went into your era, it was a very challenging, tough. They pushed you around. I went in the 97, 99 era. And then you have today when you're in the military, everything about whether you read about Genghis Khan, Napoleon, Alexander, Patton, any of these guys, Churchill, everything was about who had the next move. And typically there's this whole concept when you hear about grandmasters in chess, they say the average player knows how to make their next 1 to 3 moves. A pro knows 3 to 5 moves. A master knows 10 moves. A grandmaster knows 15 moves. I think that applies also in life. I think sometimes people don't know which move to do first. Sometimes people want to do move 22 on move 3, and it gets them in trouble. People sometimes buy certain things they shouldn't buy yet, and they think it's the right thing to do because they just got a $100,000 check, which that thing they should have bought could have been move number 13. So how do you come about putting that system together? This whole premise behind the book got started because, one of the most famous questions people ask, what is the key to success, right? And it's a very basic question people ask when new podcasters start. They ask questions like, what is the key to success? And they make their typical routine 10 questions. When I was 21, first getting started, I kind of wanted to what everybody else would say. Some would say, you got to marry the right person. Okay. Some would say, you got to have God in your life. You got to work hard. You got to save money. You got to, be respectful. You got to learn how to sell. You got to learn how money works. For me, the more and more I watched people and spend time with them, those who did the best knew how to process issues, and they had a system on how to process issues. So I'm not interested on anything else except for how you decipher information that we all have and you put it together. It's kind of like that one movie, The Genius, that one movie where the guy makes the windshield wiper. I don't know if you've seen the movie.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know there's something about Genius was in the movie, and this guy goes against Ford. Ford steals it from him. It costs his wife. It costs his kids. It costs everything. And then he comes back and he goes to court and he represents himself because he's broke. And the attorney for Ford says, listen, what he did is nothing. It's 3 pieces he put together. And he says, what do you have to say to that? He says, Your Honor, this man didn't do anything special. Then the guy gets up. He says, look, how many of you have used the word however in your vocabulary before? Yes. How many of you have used the word love before? Yes. How many of you guys have used the word house before? Where are you going with this? These are all words used by Charles Dickens in his book that became a bestseller, read by tens of millions of people. If you know all these words, how come you've never written a book like him? It's because he knows how to sequence the words and the rest of us don't. Right. It's not the idea that these 3 weren't unique. I just know how to put them together. So that's the whole idea about when you know your next 5, 10, 15 moves, you have an edge over your competitor. So that's what the book is about.
And that's important because we're entering a whole brave new world right now. What was the nostalgia of yesterday is gone. But I think the most powerful, I've handed it out to everybody, the best thing you've done is your, because of YouTube, because I'm not technically inclined here, but anyway, it's wartime leaders and peacetime leaders. And right now, is my opinion, you'd better be wartime. And as you said, you were Army and I was Marine Corps. The hardest thing I have to do is talk to somebody, first of all, who has never been in the military. There's something lost in translation. The second thing is you haven't been to combat. Like I know when I first came back from combat in Vietnam, I couldn't talk to the guys that were in the rear with the gear and the beer. You know what I mean? The guys hadn't been on the front line. They were pussies as far as I was concerned. But it wasn't that they were pussies. I had changed so much. And it was really a rough transition coming back to the real world and talking to people who haven't even been on the front line and who have never served. And when their fingernails break and they got to call their manicurist, they're in trauma. You know what I mean? And it's just a whole different reality. And so what you're saying about the next 5 moves is you better be a wartime, leader right now. So would you mind going quickly the distinction between wartime leaders and peacetime leaders?
Yeah, so the peacetime leader takes the proper route. They go to college, they get a nice degree. They typically had a safe environment they were raised in. Everything was good. Everything was safe. Nothing crazy happened to them. And then they pretty much by, 16 years old, they know what route they're going to take. And when they make their decisions, peacetime leaders are more methodical. They take a little bit more time. They're more inspired about making the perfect decision. Everything has to be perfect. And they're okay if they have a bad day, a bad week, a bad month. It's okay. We just had a bad month. It's not a big deal. We had a bad quarter. We'll figure it out. We'll get it back together next quarter. And they're just more committee driven. We'll make the decision with 50 of us. It's like the perfect example is that movie Ford versus Ferrari, where the scene about the guys handing the folder, 4 different people pass it until it comes to Henry Ford II. He says, listen, you're running an environment here with a bunch of bureaucrats and aristocrats where one decision takes 6 months to make. And you ain't going to be able to compete with Ferrari because Ferrari, Enzo runs it. And he's going to kick your ass because he's a wartime leader. So now the wartime leader, they make a decision, boom, here's what we're doing. They're not taking 6 months to make a decision. They are all about a day, a week, a month can cause casualties. So even in their mindset, they can't afford to lose a day. They can't afford to lose a week. They can't afford to lose a month. They win their people through emotions, through charisma, through charm, through vision. And while the peacetime leaders win their people over through intelligence, through logic, through education, through degrees, bonuses, through a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, money.
And so, yeah, it's and by the way, when you go through it, and you're in a wartime. I was a kid living in Iran, and Iran and Iraq go to war. I'm 7 years old. And one day we got bombed 67 times. I'm living in Tehran. We're in a 4-story house. We hear the alarm when the planes cross the border and hear the radio tell us, Tabajo, Tabajo, alamat qirmez, meaning attention, attention. The red signal means that planes have crossed the border. And then all we hear is the whistling sound. And I'm hearing the whistling sounds and you hear it, then there's a 5-second pause, then there's an explosion. And you hear it getting closer and closer and closer. And I'm just looking at my dad. It's my mom, my dad, and my sister. And I'm looking at my dad. We're hiding under stairs because every time we saw buildings coming down, they always stuck. If you were here, it's the safest place to be in a house. So we're sitting there, we're hiding, and I look at my dad, and my dad is not flinching. And I'm looking at my mom. My mom is crying, hysterical. My dad is just like, it's going to be all right. What do you mean it's going to be all right? We're being bombed on. It's going to be all right. Then we escaped to a city called Karaj. We got bombed there. Then we escaped to a city called Bandar. And then eventually we made it out. We went in Germany, lived at a refugee camp for a year and a half. And then I came out here to the States and I joined the army. The moral of the story is wartime leaders bring peace of mind to everybody. They're poised, they're calm, they're collected, they make quick decisions, they move, and people around them get calmer and calmer and calmer. And God knows today, watch how many new heroes, Robert, are going to be born during times like this. You were talking about it earlier. You know this yourself from experience when you came back from Vietnam. You don't look at the same lens. You don't look at the world from the same lens. Everything is kind of slower for you because you're kind of like, this is not a big deal. When you got bullets going a million miles an hour, you got to figure this out. So today, if there's ever been a time where people are wanting to be the heroes of the next 5-10 years, where the world starts talking about them, where they become financially free, or they become the heroes of their family, where their cousins, their nephews, their kids, their grandkids, their great-grandkids are going to look at them and say, that's my hero. That's who I want to be like one day. This is that opportunity.
Amen. Amen.
You can't earn those stripes during peaceful times. You only earn those stripes during these times.
Patrick, we have to go to break, but anyway, I want everybody to listen to what you say. I'll just repeat what I said, is that when I came back from the war, when I came back off the front lines in Vietnam and came back to Okinawa, and I'm talking to some lieutenant or a captain who had never been on the front line, he was different because I was different. And then when I came back to the States and I get spit on at Norton Air Force Base by a bunch of hippies and eggs thrown at me, it took more wartime cools, not to go kill those little SOBs. But anyway, that's.
And I know we need to go to break, but I just want to make a point, because you're saying what you're saying is the wartime leaders are the ones that have been on the front line, whether it's business, whether it's war, whether it's wherever. They've been on the front lines. They've been in the trenches. They've actually experienced it versus just sat in their ivory tower of academia or wherever. So it's the people that are in the trenches in the front line that are the wartime leaders.
And this is wartime right now. So when we come back, we've been going more into how you can become a wartime leader versus, I can't repeat the word over the air, but I have some vocabulary. Being a Marine, we have a different vocabulary. So we come back with more with a great leader here, Patrick Bet-David, and we'll find out more how you can prepare with the next 5 steps that is in his book. It's because the future is very bright, but not if you're a peacetime leader. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And right now we're talking to Patrick Bet-David about being either you're a wartime leader or you're a peacetime pussy. That's really the whole thing right now. So you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio Show anytime, anywhere on iTunes, Android, or YouTube. And please leave us a review anytime you listen. And all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. We archive them for one reason. It's because we're educators. We have nothing to sell, really. And one of the best ways to learn is called repetition. You listen to this program a second and third time, your intelligence, your mind will expand. You'll hear things you never heard before. And the other part of it is you have friends, family, and especially business associates who are peacetime pussies. Whatever they call them. Let them listen to this and discuss it. Really discuss it. Because as Patrick is saying, and what I'm saying, is when you're under fire, you change. And you kind of understand what life is all about. But the average person, they're talking about getting rid of plastic straws. I'm going, have you got anything better to do with your time? Get paper straws. But oh my God. But anyway, that's the nature of the show here. This is a very critical time. It's a brave new world we're entering. The world will never be the same. There will never be job security again. I think the U.S. economy is going to tank. There is, if you look at the history of the whole world, every 1,500 years there's a collapse. The first collapse was the Bronze Age. Second collapse was the Roman Empire, and this might be the collapse of the third. So if you think that tomorrow is going to be a V-shaped curve, the dollar's going to come back and everybody's going to be happy and happy days again, I hope you're correct. But I have my doubts right now. Any comments, Kim?
Yes, well, our guest is Patrick Bet-David. He's the author of Drop Out and Get Schooled, The Case for Thinking Twice About College. And his new book coming out is called Your Next 5 Moves, Master the Art of Business Strategy. He's also the creator of Valuetainment, which is a fantastic YouTube channel that for entrepreneurs. And he gives some just straightforward, no nonsense, great information, clear information about what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And Patrick, one of the things we're talking about is wartime leader versus peacetime leader. So people starting a business right now, or if they're thinking of starting a business, they have to be really a wartime leader. You've got to be in the trenches and get your hands dirty, do whatever it takes to succeed. And right now with this coronavirus, we are definitely in a wartime situation.
Patrick, one of the things that really bugs me, I called this one person up not too long ago, and I said, hey, let's get some work done. He says, it's Saturday.
Wrong answer.
It amazes me how many people don't realize how magical of a day Saturday is.
Patrick, do you know what day it is at all? It's just a blur. You know what I mean?
I honestly don't know what day it is. It's either Thursday or Friday. That's all I know because of my calendar. I'm not being sarcastic. It's either Thursday or Friday today.
But if I told you I'm coming to town on Sunday, would we go to work?
Of course, we'd be together. You and I, if we could do whatever we want to do if you were coming to town.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But work this is the biggest thing is, people talk about do what you love. I think it goes beyond that. Come to serve people. We're out there to serve people. And there's another guy, Jordan Peterson. He says it really, really well. He says, if you don't have meaning in your life, life's really, really hard because it's that meaning, it's that passion that gets you over the tough times. So once again, we're talking to Patrick Bet-David, and we're talking about the difference between a wartime leader and a peacetime leader. And we're definitely at war right now with this coronavirus. And the problem is we got a bunch of peacetime pussies leading us. That is a big problem. Thank God we got Trump, who likes to fight. I don't know if he's fighting in the right way, but that's not my decision. Anyway, Patrick, I want to talk a little. And first of all, I want to acknowledge my wife, Kim, is that the biggest problems we had at Rich Dad is we hired peacetime leaders. We had guys that didn't go to war. They dodged the draft. And every time people told me that as a former Marine, when somebody said, yeah, I just dodged a draft because I stayed in college, something inside of me winced, ugh. But I didn't know what I felt until, Patrick, you did that YouTube video about wartime leaders and peacetime leaders. Because all of our programs, all of our problems, not all, but a major problem is I'm definitely wartime, but that doesn't work in peacetime. That was one of the big learnings I've had to do. So I want to commend my sweetheart, Kim, for going in there and cleaning out the rat's nest. So with that, any comments on that, Kim? I mean, it's been a good exercise.
Oh, it's been excellent. And listening to Patrick's wartime and peacetime leaders, you have to get into roll your sleeves up and get into the dirt. And there was a lot of dirt. And here, the thing is, we knew what we needed to do. We didn't necessarily have a plan of how we were going to come out of it. For example, getting rid of our partner, who was 1/3 of our revenue, without a plan to replace it, but we knew that we had to do that. So we made the tough choices. We had the tough discussions. We just did what we knew we needed to do.
And that was almost 1 year ago. If we hadn't done this, we'd be dead in the water right now.
Yeah, we would.
So wait, Patrick, let's continue on with discussion here. What would you say to somebody right now, especially if they're working for a peacetime pussy leader?
That's a great opportunity for you to be one. That's the part.
Yeah.
Again, the hero-making opportunity today is the highest it's ever been. My philosophy years ago when I was thinking about what to do, like what industry to get involved in, one of my advisors gave a great advice for me. He says, never go to a place that's peaceful. He says, always go to a place where there's problems, solve the problem, or be part of solving the problem, and you'll become a hero. And he was right.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of things going on right now where everybody's looking for safety. What can I do that's the safest decision to make? Where can I go that's the safest place to be? But that's not how wealth has ever been created. That's not how heroes have been created. It's just not how we've done anything great.
So if somebody's thinking that today, right now, I want to go where it's safe, I want to take care of myself, I want to be where it's safe and no problems, what would you say to them?
You're going to pay a massive price for it. That's what I'm going to say to you. Look, think about it this way. Let's just think about it from a different vantage point, and let's give credit to the people who are afraid right now. There's 3 things that we all have to be thinking about right now. One is health, one is protecting our wealth, and last one is protecting our income, because if you don't have an income, we're eventually going to get back to working. And if you're not prepared for that, you're going to have a very big problem, and the problem that could last 20 years, not just like a 1 year or 2 year problem. On the health side, all we can do is follow the recommendation that's coming from the state, whatever state you're part of, whatever you're being told, whatever country. This is obviously a message, show that it's being listened to from around the world. You have to pay attention to what your country is telling you. That's number one, your health. So then you have to look at the people above you, on your side and below you. Here's what I mean. Look at the people above you. How can you take care of your parents and your grandparents? What do you need to do? I had conversations with my dad and my mother, and I told them exactly what recommendations I've given them. And my dad is a 77-year-old stubborn man. He's my father. I'm his son. So convincing him was a little bit more challenging than my mom. Then I had to have a conversation with my siblings, my sister, and my peers. Then I had conversations with my kids. We talk about it openly, even though they're only 8, 6, and 3. And then I have my executives, my investors, my staff, and my 14,000 insurance agents nationwide and 120 offices that we have. So that's the health side, okay? I brought experts to tell us, our leaders, our teammates, of how to be more prepared to take care of our health. Now you have wealth protection. On the wealth protection side, you got to figure out a way to protect your wealth. 2008, when the market tanked, we lost 38% in a year. Well, we lost 39% in a month. We went from 29.5 to 1918, whatever the number that hit, and $25 trillion of wealth was lost. How are you going to be protecting yourself? This is the time to kind of start educating yourself on alternatives about protecting your wealth. And a last one, which to me, depending on what phase of your life you're in, some people are in wealth protection phase.
But some people aren't income. They haven't made the money yet. They haven't had the kind of income that allowed them to put money aside. What skills do I need today to be able to create income? If they laid you off, 3.28 million people got laid off 2 weeks ago in America, 6.6 last week. That's a record of 10 million in a month. The prior record was 659 back in 1982, October, right after Carter was a one-term president. Reagan took over. We had 659,000 people that applied for unemployment. Now that record went to 10 million in a month. So out of this 10 million with the $2.2 trillion of stimulus that's being paid out, how many of those people just went and took the unemployment, and how many of them are actually getting unemployed? We don't know that. That data is going to come out in the next 6 to 12 months. So how are you going to make money today? You got to learn how to pivot, adapt, adjust. That's mindset skill set. Then real skill set. You need to learn how to use Zoom, how to use GoToWebinar, how to three-way calls, how to sell over FaceTime. What product and service can you sell during FaceTime? What skill sets do you need to learn? If you're not a good salesperson, you got to learn how to sell. If you're not a good negotiator, you got to learn how to do that. You can no longer say, I'm not a good salesperson. You don't have the option today, sweetheart. You just don't. Everybody who says they don't know how to sell, everybody has to learn how to sell today. Because if you're stuck at your house for the next 3 months, 6 months, let's just say this goes 6 months, you have to figure out how to make money. And those who know how to sell a service with a phone call or a Zoom or a webinar will be okay. But if you wait too long to learn those skill sets, it's going to be pretty painful, and that pain's going to last a few years.
So, Patrick, that's great advice, but, I have a bunch of friends, I won't mention their names, but their kids are wimps. I mean, they're those little spoiled brats, mommy and daddy gave them everything and all this, and my couple of my friends can say, what's wrong with my kids? What's wrong with my kids? And I said, you're what's wrong with the kids. He says, what should I do? I said, send them to the Marine Corps. That'll shape them up. And he goes, and his wife went, never do that. He's not going to die for this country, all that stuff. Well, what'd you say to that kid? Mommy and daddy are the wimps.
Yeah. What I would say to the kids is run away from your parents and disappear for 5 years and come back. Go watch the movie, Count of Monte Cristo. I don't know if you remember the movie Count of Monte Cristo, where this guy has a guy that gets rid of him, puts him in jail, takes his girl away from him, and he goes to jail. In jail, he loses everything. He meets a guy that reads the right philosophy books and money books and law books. He gets out of jail, becomes the richest guy in the city. His girl marries the guy that put him in prison. He goes, puts the biggest party together, arrives in a helicopter, and he invites the guy that put him in jail because he changed his name. The guy shows up with his ex, and his ex looks at him in the eye saying, I recognize those eyes, but it's been 20 years, and he knows exactly who she is, and then she finds out who he is, and he becomes a hero. I mean, sometimes you got to disappear from your parents because your mommy's, raising you as a pansy, and if your mommy's hasn't desensitized you with the pansiness, you got to get away from it.
Well,
I sat down with it.
Yeah, Patrick, in this case, both mommy and daddy are, what's, I'm going, don't you understand?
But that's great. I mean, that is really a great point because he's got that kid's got to have the guts to step away.
Yeah,
he really does.
He's got to run away, man. He's got to run away.
Yep.
So he's got to run away.
Special forces need them in Afghanistan. The Marines could use them in SEALs, and all this stuff. And I don't know. This is my last comment to you. How much did joining the Army shape who you are today?
Oh, there's no way in the world I'm who I am today. No way in the world. Listen, the story you just said is a fascinating story. I'm a kid in Iran. We're going out to a park, and we used to go to this park called Park-e-Shahan-Shahi. They changed the name. It was Shah's Park, but they changed the name. We'd go to this park, and my mother would always go. And eventually, every time I would fall, oh, my gosh, come here, baby. Oh, my. And my dad said, no rule. I am never taking the kids to the park with you. He's saying this to my mom. And my mom's like, what are you talking about? These are my kids. You can't say that. I said, I'm not taking them anymore. You want to take them? You take them. But if I'm taking them to the park, you're not coming. So we go to a park one time. And there's this roundabout that people are riding the bicycle, these kids. And everyone's going one way. And I tell my dad, I want to go the other way. He says, you don't want to go the other way. You're going to hit somebody. He says, no, I want to go the other way. He says, if you hit somebody, you hurt yourself, I'm not helping you. I said, okay. So I went and took the bike, and I go the other way. So 50 kids are going one way. I'm going the other way. So I sped up, and I sped up. Finally, I'm waving at my dad. I don't look at the kid in front of me. Bam! I hit this kid. I fly off the bike. The other kid flies off the bike. His parents run up to him. They're telling me, what kind of a kid are you? Who are your parents? We've never seen a kid like you before. And I point on my dad. My dad's standing on the sidelines. He hasn't even gotten up off the chair. He points at the water faucet. Says, "Go wash your hands." I was bleeding. My knees were bleeding and my elbows were bleeding. I go wash myself. So what do you want to do now? What'd you learn from that? I said, it doesn't work. He said, maybe you want to go the other way. What do you think? He says, I said, I'm going to go the other way. And I went the other way. That applied later on in life when I decided to join the Army and said, I just can't be around all these guys. I went to the Army. I came back. Robert, I can't even describe it to you. I mean, it was as if you came back and you look at everybody around you. They're sleeping and waking up at 10 o'clock. My peers who are partying hardcore, and they're not lifting weights or going to the gym or training themselves. And I said, this is way too easy. Now, obviously, the first 6 months in the military sucked because who the hell wants to wake up 4 o'clock every morning, go to sleep at midnight on boot camp and AIT? But it shaped me to who I am today. I definitely, when I tell you definitely, there's no way in the world Patrick Bet-David is who he is if I don't go to the 101st Airborne Division.
Amen,
no way.
Amen. Thank you for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time, but I really want to encourage people. Patrick has a fantastic insurance company where he trains thousands of people to be strong, because that's what we have to be today, and entrepreneurs. And secondly, he has valuetainment, and I love that because we're in the business of edutainment. We have the cash flow board games. People can have fun learning and all this. It sure beats those peacetime guys who climb the ladder of academia and then never leave school, like my poor dad.
And Patrick, your next 5 moves, your new book, your next 5 moves. When's that come out?
Your next 5 moves is coming out June 30th.
June 30th. Perfect. And if you want more information from Patrick, just click on this. And if you want more information from Patrick, just click on the link on the screen.
And the reason that the most important book is because next 5 moves, the brightest future is about to come, but it's not going to be what was in the past. So, Patrick, thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. It was excellent.
And keep up the great work of valuetaining, edutaining, but your information is timely and brilliant and
priceless.
Prescient.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been a blast. Thank you so much, Kim. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
We'll be
Bye-bye.
watching.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Once again, I want to thank Patrick Bet-David, Valuetainment, and his insurance company, but he's a great leader today. Once again, you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime, anywhere on iTunes, Android, or YouTube. And please leave us a comment what you thought of the program. We'd love to hear from you. But most importantly, we archive this program so you can listen to this again, because repetition is if you listen to this program all more time, you'll learn twice as much. So have your friends, family, and business associates, especially if they're wimps, listen to this program. Any comments, Kim?
Well, I highly recommend you watch Patrick's YouTube video on valuetainment. It's on wartime leader versus peacetime leader. It's magnificent. And today, if you've made your way through academia and your and corporate ways of doing things and bureaucracy, and now you're out of work and you need to make money, you're going to need to change into a wartime leader, at least a wartime soldier of some sort, because it's not going to be the same thing. You've got to think differently today, and that's what Patrick was saying.
So let me tell you a quick story about the evolution. Like, I was a surfer kid. I go to military school, joined the Marine Corps. Then I go to flight school, go to Camp Pendleton, go to a stage in Okinawa, and then I go into combat. And like I was saying, when I came back from Vietnam, my flight suit was no longer green. It was kind of an orange because we had been fighting so much, been sweating so much. We were just torn to shreds out there. And I come walking, this was in the Okinawa Marine Corps base, Camp Fatima, and this major who had never been in combat comes up to me and he goes, "Marine, your uniform looks like shit." I nearly decked him. This pussy had never been in combat. And he's looking at me, and my uniform looked like hell, was true, but there was a reason for it. And that's what Patrick is talking about, is the metamorphosis. So metamorphosis, the definition of which I really, really love, is that it's the transformation from an immature form to an adult. So the good thing about this crisis we are in, some of you will turn into adults, and some of you will remain little kids sucking your thumb, hoping the government or your boss is going to save you. So it's your choice right now. But this could be the biggest opportunity of your life, depending how you look at it. So that's the reason we're really happy to have Patrick Bet-David. Please watch his video, Wartime Leaders and Peacetime Leaders, because really that's a decision in your heart, body, and soul at this moment. So thank you for listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show.
Tôi xa quê bao năm tháng qua, nhưng trong trái tim không bao giờ xa. Lời mẹ ru con hiu hiu trẻ mùa lụt nước